Welcome to Game Soup, the game design podcast where we throw ideas in the pot and see what's cooking. I'm Chloe Montgomery, and I'm joined by your mountain goat's mountain goat,
Kayla Dice.
Before we started recording, Kayla gave us a wonderful rendition of the mountain goats singing Red Wine Supernova, which I won't make her sing now, but...
I would say search those keywords on TikTok and you'll find someone who is doing it far better than me, which I was imitating. The fun thing is, before starting, on recording, there's probably this little clip that Chloe has access to that I imagine she cuts from the episode. But before we actually go into the intro, there's a bit where Chloe is going, "What are you this week?" And it feels like someone choosing which weapon to hit you with.
I just like being mean to people. I can get away with being mean to. What can I say?
I hate it when people are mean to me.
Oh yeah, sure.
How are you doing this week, Chloe?
I'm good. I'm still a little bit sicky, but I'm happy to have a day off. And I'm being productive. I mowed the lawn and everything.
Nice. I'm going to do laundry after this. I chose to not do laundry before this because I remember the last time I did that, it was... I can't remember if it was visible on the recording or just the pickup. I think maybe the noise cancelling did get rid of it, but...
or something.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. So I've been sensible and smart.
And we appreciate it.
I'm not running a Kickstarter at the moment,
God.
Which is great. Yeah. I'll probably run another one before the year's out.
Oh my god.
But I'm not running one at the moment. And I was thinking how I kind of want to just finish a game. But also make and finish a game in a short period of time. The thing is, do you remember this was maybe the December episode, one of the December episodes we did, where we ended up looking in my work in progress doc.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, I'm almost I almost want to revisit that now, because a lot of those things have passed. Because I'm Psycho Dungeon, it's basically done now. In terms of my parts right now, it's paused. There's a tiny bit of extra writing I need to do for the textures. I was also maybe going to expand a bit how they work, pull out some of the ideas from a stretch goal we didn't hit and, put them in there. But basically that's done until Alyssa edits it, and then it goes to me for layout. Transgender Deathmatch Legend 2 is probably the other thing I'll kickstart this year. So that actually is... That's just got lots of time and stuff for me to sort of figure it out. I would need to finish Psycho Dungeon first before I could get it up for pre-launch. And then I'd also need to figure out things like team and how I do art and stuff. The other two ideas I had in stages of development. One was Nemesis Revealed, which we came up with on this podcast and mostly had done. The thing about Nemesis Revealed, I will finish it one day, but I would probably need to playtest just is a single session very fun? Does the idea of how I'm thinking this game works, it works. Also, it's been a long process as well. Then the other thing is Time Flies, which was a sort of time travel adventure game. I have a lot of mechanic stuff for that already, and I had a lot of setting stuff already, and I think all of that stuff is really good.
Yeah.
But this would probably be a big game, so I don't think it would be I can write this and finish it quickly.
Yeah.
But B, also because it would be a big and definitely more sort of campaign length game, I kind of feel I need to get back into playing sort of short campaign games. Because I feel I'm constantly always trying to be I'm trying to make games that I could at least see myself playing a lot of. Even if that doesn't necessarily always happen, it could have happened. And a lot of last year, the main kind of game stuff I played was either campaign stuff or attempted campaigns or, few shot stuff. So writing Terminal made sense. Some of that went into how Psycho Dungeon was built. Though Psycho Dungeon also supports other kinds of stuff. And definitely went into Time Flies. Whereas the group I was in ended up kind of splitting apart. and I haven't done as much stuff lately. Like, at the moment, I'm not playing many role-playing games at all. I'm trying to get back into that, but the way I'm going to do it first is probably going to be, like, a lot of one-shot stuff. So I feel like I need to get back into a campaign, which I might do. I was thinking of trying to run, like, a terminal campaign near me before I could revisit Time Flies. So those are 4 ideas that would all just take... Actually, it's free even, basically, because, like I said, Psycho Dungeon's practically done. Kind of so's TDL, to be honest. In terms of if I wanted to do any writing, the only 2 things I could do writing for at the moment are 2 projects which are longer ways off of completing. Yeah, so I want to just sort of, like, knock something out.
See, that's what I did with Picnic Dungeon and Mouse in the House, which... isn't out yet, but will be eventually, lol.
I love that you're calling it Mouse in the House now. I didn't know about that fact.
Well, it just felt like Mouse Quest was very generic, and... yeah, so just Mouse in the House. It feels fun to say.
It does. It's got a big, like, Mouse in the House energy.
Fridays on Disney Channel, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's fun to do. I also think it is a nice sort of, like, palate cleanser after, like, working on something that takes ages. Also, to be honest, all of the games I've done since, honestly, in quite a while, have been, like, long or interrupted things. Like, even, like, smaller games which are one-shot stuff, like Godslingers 30 Foes and Illustrator's Guide to the Dreamplands were all, like, I wrote the first half of those games, like, half a year before I wrote the other half. So it didn't feel like the same sort of, I'm buzzing, I'm jamming, I'm in the
zone.
In the hotbed of sort of fun creativity. So this is part of what I'm doing with this week. In my sort of, like, I need to do things because I don't want to lose any sort of habits or routines I had that were useful, but also I don't have a Kickstarter taking up all my attention. So I was trying to come up with a game idea. That is my big preamble to that. Then the next part is that because as long-term and loyal listeners of this viewers of this podcast will know, it was recently my birthday.
Christ.
And you may be asking, like, do you mean at the time of recording, at the time of release? I mean, any time you were listening to this, it was in some sense, when you really think about it, recently my birthday.
It was within 12 months of Kayla's birthday.
Yeah, you're always closer to a birthday than you are when you think about it. And I got 2 games. One is my mum got me Breath of the Wild, which is nice. That's... park that. Nothing to do with this today.
Okay.
And my friend also got me Balatro, because I thought Balatro looked cool. And you told me to play Balatro before, Chloe.
It's a very Kayla-looking game. I've not played it, but basically everyone on the internet seems to love it, so...
I feel you'd like Balatro, because you do play poker, right? Or know how to play it.
No, but I know how to play it. I used to play lots of video game pokers. Like, Xbox 360, they had this poker game, I forgot what it was called, but it was like... you had, like, your avatars, like your Xbox avatars, and every Saturday night they'd do, like, this big live tournament. So, like, after Doctor Who, going upstairs, playing my live poker tournament, that was my Saturday night.
That's how you came to be.
Yeah.
It's your origin stories. The way Balatro works is so, like, you're basically... It's sort of a bit like roguelike-y in that, like, you have a boss each level, or ante, that can vary a bit. But it's basically, you get, like, a draw, and you have to, out of your hand, make various poker hands that score different points. And with Balatro, as you go on, you can get, like, jokers that modify, like, your runs and stuff, and influence the scoring of it. But what I initially said to Chloe was an idea I had after playing Balatro, and playing, I need to emphasize, a lot of Balatro. Like, really, quite... I got the game maybe, like, a week ago.
Are you playing it on, like, PC or Switch or...
Switch.
I'm sure you'd be able to find your hours played.
I don't think
on your profile.
I don't think... I'm sure I could. I'm sure I could do lots of things. I could, like, you know, I could go lie down in the sun without sunscreen. I'm not gonna.
So, Kayla keeps sending me these messages that is like, what if this game that I keep telling you about had this idea? And I'm like, okay, Kayla, I am at work right now. Tell me about this later.
You could just tell me when you're at work. You could just tell me when you're at work.
So I said, Kayla, let's talk about this on the pod. You clearly have a lot of ideas for a poker game. So what is this game?
The original idea I sent you was like, what if a magic system was built on poker hands? So like every card is mapped to a key word, and like maybe the hand you score is the strength of a spell. And so when you play a hand, you're describing how you combo all the words into whatever spell you're doing. That was like the initial idea. I thought like that seems fun.
So is it like,
because I always think
a 2 gives you fire and a 3 gives you ice, or is it like, do you build your
part of me, the more
define...
I think about it, would be that like your number and suit have different things as well. So yeah. I'd say it would be like, maybe it's like fire, ice, lightning, wind, like the 4 suits, but then also like the 13 card like values are their own thing. So one is something like, oh, ball, sphere, push. And so it's a case of like, oh, you play like a pair of 2s. Okay, cool, that's like 2 push effects, and the pair means this can use like fucking ice and fire. What does this spell look like to defeat this obstacle or problem you're stuck into?
Okay.
And so then I was saying, like, oh, I think it says, like, interesting about setting when that's how magic works. Because that means magic's kind of a bit shuffleable and random.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like,
if you're not...
I think, like, character generation, you'd have, like, oh, I have a 3 in my hand, so my character sheet says that I can discard that to redraw it, or whatever. Or I can look at the top 3 cards of the deck and choose one to put into my hand, or something like that. Maybe that's what the Fates cards do. Maybe they have special effects like that, but...
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like, that's a question and stuff I had about for you. But I was saying, like, oh yeah, it implies, like, magic's a bit random. Like, you can't always do fire. Like, you can't be like, oh, my character's an expert on fire magic, if you then draw a hand and, like, oops, no hearts. Guess I'm unable to cast fire right now. Like, it implies it's a bit random you're drawing on the forces there. So I gradually started working this out into more of a game. And my current idea is in Balatro, you're 1 player. And so initially I thought, okay, that's how you all do this. You're always, like, playing from your hand. Gradually, the more I thought about it, I was like, right, but that's actually really hard if everyone's also drawing from the same deck. And even though, like, playing cards are cheap and you can get them from, like 150 from most corner shops, it does feel ridiculous to say if you want to play this with like 4 players, you need to own 4 decks of cards.
I think
so I was like,
being
okay,
a shared deck, you could have like fun things like, oh, okay, so I get to look at the top 3 cards, and I know that you want to do a lightning move, so I'm going to draw this specific card and put on at the top of the deck the lightning card, like a spade or whatever, so that you can then next turn draw the lightning card. So it being a shared deck lets you like influence the weave of magic or whatever. And it's like you're always playing from the same source of magic.
Yeah, I think like that works better. It's cleaner. And so what I decided was I was like, oh, well then you're playing a hand together. It's not like you are playing from your own hand. It is like you are going like, I've got like 2 6s. Can anyone like make something else with that? And someone's like, oh, I think I can. They put down 3 cards, actually, you've made a full house together. Or it's like, oh yeah, I've got the other 2 6s. Let's call this as a 4 of a kind. Yeah,
you're working together to make the river.
Yeah.
To make
and like
hand,
your cast, And like the spell, you're doing that together. Kind of, I think in that sense, almost nicks a bit of ritual magic stuff.
Yeah,
So I then
it's
was
about
thinking,
casting
like,
magic together rather than just, oh, I'm cool mage, you're also cool mage. No, we are mages together.
yeah. And now this is where I've got a degree of setup to this thing here, because I started to get an idea of how this works, and I thought, like, oh, okay, you're going through phases. Each obstacle is you drawing a card, which will have a prompt linked to it, saying, like, here's what this obstacle is, and we'll also then have a difficulty set. So it's like, oh yeah, you need to beat a pair to do this, or, like, if that's a really starter one. And eventually, like, the maybe, like, final boss is sort of like, yeah, you need to beat or match a full house. Like, you need to have either a better full house or
Somehow
something else.
Get a 6 of a kind or some bullshit, like...
Yeah, I'm curious. That's the question I do have for you, is how much sort of, like, bullshit am I going to allow? But my current idea for plot-wise is that you are basically a group of magicians who are escaping from, like, the hideout of the secret society that trained you in magic.
Yeah.
And I think maybe you draw, like, different face cards, like, from Ace to Jack, as, like, character cards.
Okay.
Where maybe they're things like you can always use them, but they're not discarded for that. But I think that's, like, one way. And I think, like, you make up these questions of why you're escaping. I think it's GM-less because whoever draws a card gets to interpret the obstacle and frame that scene, and then it's like, we go through there, we, like, deal with the challenge, and then there's kind of, like, a clear amount of phases. Like, I don't know how many I'll do. Does that make sense? And my idea for the game's title is I call it Out of the Fold, and I say that the secret society is called The Fold.
Yeah, I like that. It's cute. It is giving kind of a hack, like a multiplayer hack of Transgender Deathmatch Legend or Hunt for the Bitter Cold, in that, like, you've got somebody pulling these cards. Oh, this is the scene. Flip to this page in the book. This is what we've got to engage with, or whatever. I really like that as, like, a sort of hack for it. I think, like, instead of drawing face cards, you could have, like, oh, okay, I'm going to pick this character, and their special move is that they can change a number up, 1 or down, like by 1, say, so that you can get, like, funky 5 of a kinds or whatever, or whatever, or, like, oh, I can change the suit of this card so that we can have more fire in it, or whatever. Or,
yeah, how much, this is a question, with, like, any sort of abilities, how much do you think people can do them?
I think if you're saying it's, like, something about acts or something, you get to, like, use one of those special powers maybe, like, once an act, like, which is every, like, 3 or so fights or encounters.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's like, it encourages you to use your cool powers, but you can't just be using them every round. You need to actually engage with the mechanics of the game as well as using your cool powers.
Yeah, I also think that's a fun thing of, like, as you build your hands, you're like, oh, I think between us we have something that gets us a royal flush, and it's like, okay, we should probably save that for the boss, which means we need to keep making cards with, like, only everything else. Like, I think there could be some interesting tactics
like,
stuff.
you keep cards in your hand between encounters, so, like, you can save your big royal flush for the boss. I like
this.
That.
Then the other sort of, two related questions I have. And I feel, annoyingly enough, the answer is I need to test a bunch of stuff. And by test a bunch of stuff, I do just mean, like, with a deck of cards at my desk, not actually, like, playtesting, just to see how some, like, probability shit comes up. And also, the answer is probably it should depend on the player count, which is how much of a hand size does each player have, and how much draw are they, like, how much ability to, like, discard and redraw do they have?
I was going to say, like, oh, you can have up to 5 cards in your hand, and instead of adding cards to the spell that's ongoing, you can discard 2 in a turn. But if you do that, then you can't engage with the spell.
That's interesting. I did at one point wonder about a situation where I'm saying, like, oh, you can discard and redraw as many as you want if you're stuck, but that raises the difficulty of this obstacle.
I think it's just like you are instead of adding to the mana of the spell. You are instead pulling mana from the air, from the weave. So you can't help, but it prepares you better for the next round of combat, whatever. In my head, this is like a Slay the Spire.
It's a bit Slay the Spire-y. I feel like there's probably no health, is the thing. So I do feel it is a case that, like, my idea is, like, if after all of abilities, any redrawing you've done and stuff, you can't beat an individual obstacle, is always like, oh, one magician can sacrifice themselves to let everyone else, like, make it through.
Okay. I'm thinking, like, is maybe, like, your health your maximum hand size or something, so it's kind of like a snowball-y losing, but... Because I don't like that, oh, a player just sits out for 2 hours now, lol.
Oh, well, the other thing was I did say that there was, flashbacks between every, like, obstacle.
Oh, okay. So
it's sort of like all flashbacks, like
the magic school or whatever.
Yeah, shading in some more of your backstory of, like, why you maybe joined this place, how you all hooked up as, like, people who are like, yep, we're getting the fuck out of here. And also then, because it's GM-less, in my mind, I'm like, oh, if one person, like, does sacrifice himself early on, which I think should be very unlikely to happen early on, because, like, the early things are going to be, like, can you beat a hare? Like, a sacrifice should probably only come very late. Not very late, but later when, like, the hand is higher. Is, like, also it can just be that, like, oh yeah, they just, like, take way more control and ownership over, like, framing obstacles and stuff. Because that's always, like, their role. Hand size could be fun. I think hand size would be funner if I was doing this as a game I would, like, test more properly and maybe was bigger.
Maybe that's just, like, one of the characters' abilities is that they have a bigger hand size or something.
Yeah, so this is why I'm also like, I feel like these numbers do need to be different. Because I'm like, if I say, yeah, you get 5 cards in your hand. At 2 players, that's really hard to... Well, it's not really hard, but, like, your odds are worse. Whereas if it's like, there are, 5 of you, it's like, cool, you've got, like, over half of the deck in your hand straight away.
You have 7 cards minus the amount of players. Done. Balanced.
Why have you decided that one?
I just made it up on the spot so that a smaller group has a bigger hand and a bigger group has a smaller hand, so they have to work together.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Then the only other thing is also figuring out how many players I'd have this at full stop.
Well, if you have more than 7 players, you don't have a hand. So... Because too many people are pulling on the weave, and it doesn't respond to you anymore.
I feel like there's probably some Googling I could do about, like, oh, if you draw X cards, what is the likelihood of being able to make how many poker hands or whatever?
Yeah.
I feel like that number is out there and I can use that to sort of backwards figure it out. The redraw is the big one I think about, because I'm partly like... Because I feel this is so almost phase-based. There's like you set up your backstory, you make your characters, you do an obstacle, you do a flashback, you do an obstacle, you do a flashback. So I feel there does need to be a sort of like, almost like a cheat sheet I have of like, oh, what are the things you can do in an obstacle room? Which would be stuff like, you can add a card, you can use an ability if you've not used it already this act, if I go with like an act structure.
Yeah.
This is the other thing as well, is I need to also decide like how long do I imagine this game taking place.
Yeah. You can discard so many cards and draw that many back or whatever. Yeah, I think you would have a little cheat sheet that you can like print out and keep at the table, like, oh, so this is what you can do on your turn.
Yeah.
And then also on that it has like all the different poker hands that you can get. So like if you don't know poker, it helps you.
Yeah. If I printed this, which I have no idea if I would, but it could be fun if it was short enough that it would be a cheap print. I'm like, oh, I'd probably also print like a little A6 like fold-out pamphlet with this stuff. Like not quite a reference card, but like a reference pamphlet.
I think this is like a little A6 fold-out zine sort of thing. Like, although if you're wanting to do like how big are each of the encounters written? Is it like one sentence and then beat this with a pear, beat this with a fire spell?
I think...
Or is it like
I
a
don't
full
know
page,
about
like
the
Code?
sentence. I think it's probably... I think doing Oracle stuff would mean A6 for the whole book would be not fun.
Yeah.
Also, to be honest, I in general don't love how text fits at A6.
Understandable.
I've done A6 as well, so that's not me being mean about other people. I'm just like,
Have
I
you
think it can be a
seen
bit too...
the Possible World games? They did like 6 games that are on like
Yeah,
Wirebound.
actually, I've read Hounds. What size is that? Because that's not A6. That's bigger than A6, right?
Hang on, I have them on my shelf. One sec. Entertain yourselves. The tyranny in the way. Right, this is the magic of live radio, this. Let's have a look. No, they're A6.
Oh, okay. I actually got the size A6 confused with something smaller. Because actually, like, that looks quite good.
Yeah.
I don't love my own A6 thing. But I don't think the Oracle would set the difficulty, because otherwise I think you end up with a situation where it's like, someone needs to be, like, a straight out the gate, and it's like, oh, game's over.
That's what I'm
so
saying,
I think
like,
it's always
different
like...
acts would have like, oh, and then we move up to difficulty 2 stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. Like, there's, even if I'm not sure if it will be, like, act
Like,
breakdown,
after you've
I am
beat
sort of
3
like, oh, yeah.
encounters, move on to pick list 2 or whatever.
Yeah. Or I was thinking, yeah, it's just like, oh, the first room you fight is this, the second room is this.
I think you could have like a fun little pre-written adventure, yeah.
Yeah. Like, pre-written, but also kind of, I like the idea of, like, the obstacles shuffling, and also making it so if you did replay this, it's funner. Then, it's still fun each time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know how much detail I do for an Oracle. Because on one hand, I'm like, I want it to be kind of the fun of like, oh, you read that, and then you frame it a bit. Like, you have whoever's taking on, like, narrating that individual obstacle, I think they get some, like, responsibility and fun there. Trying to remember anything else I already had about this game, or anything I needed to figure out.
So,
yeah, I think a big thing I need to figure out is, like, what are characters made of?
Blood and guts and magic.
Like, because, yeah, they could all have, like, they all could just be defined by, like, a single ability.
Fuck it, they're pre-written characters, and you have one with a big blue floppy hat, one with rabbit ears, one has a big walking stick that is also a magic staff, and another one who
What game?
has
What
snakes
are
for
you
hair.
describing?
I'm just making this up, I don't know. It's just like your Zabers, but
I
it's
thought you were doing
mechanically a
something
game.
specific.
No, just
I feel like this, given I'm, in my mind, I'm imagining that I give, like, a whole shit ton of the world building here over to questions. So
Yeah.
I don't think I can do pre-written characters, but that's why I'm like, that's partly why I was wondering about, like, doing something with, like, face cards. Like, you draw a face card for each thing, and, like, it's a case of, like, oh yeah, the ace is... like, and some descriptions there that you then interpret into a character.
yeah.
Um,
You could do something with like a deck of tarot cards or the Major Arcana or something.
yeah, I am aware that this game, a lot of how it would work could be a lot funner as well if I chose to make it work on tarot instead of playing cards. But I'm not going to do that because I don't actually own any tarot.
Well, I mean, playing cards are just minor arcana, so...
Yeah. So
You
it's
did it.
like, oh, I could see, like, a world where, like, oh, actually, all of the obstacles instead come from, like, the major arcana.
I think, no, your player characters are from the Major Arcana.
There could be both, even.
Yeah.
And then it's just a guarantee you'll never run into the obstacle that is you.
Yeah.
That could actually be fun. I won't do this aspect of it because of the thing of me saying, like, it makes it a bit more inaccessible. I don't own a tarot deck at the moment, so I'd need to go buy one if I wanted to play this, which, like, I would probably like to play this after I've written it and made it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like the idea of, like, oh yeah, it's these 22 pre-written characters. which ones are you, and then the ones you aren't show up as obstacles.
Yeah, they become like the faculty or other students coming to get you or something.
Yeah. I don't think that would work for where this is at in my mind, in terms of how much I'm, like, giving over to stuff. Like, I think, like, in terms of stuff I'll need to write, I'll need to do some, like, world building section at the start, where it's like, oh, describe, like, 3 things that are true about the Fold. Describe, like, you know, each describe a rumor about the Fold's headquarters, which is where you're going to escape, so that's shading that in. You know, I think there's some questions about, like, why are you leaving? As well as some questions about, like, how do you know you're all in this together? And I think then that leaves it a bit open. Like, I don't think I can pre-write characters if I'm leaving the possibility open that, like, one group says, we're leaving the Fold because they're all goody two-shoes and we want to go rob banks for a living, versus another group saying, we're leaving the Fold because they're homophobic.
Yeah.
Like, I can't write characters who fit both those scenarios. So that's why I'm like, at least for this, I think it's more...
I think that's more...
Not quite like playbooks. Yeah, just some restrictions, or not even restrictions, just some, like, implications about a character that they could choose. Like, oh, the ace could represent this. The ace could be that. I think that could be interesting.
So what's this game called?
Yeah, the big... Out the Fold.
Out of the Fold or
out of the fold? Out of the Fold.
Okay. So were you going to say something there?
There I was going to say, so having now done this workshopping episode, the main things I need to do, I need to do some Googling to figure out what the hand size, like, restriction should be. I need to decide how discarding is working, and I need to decide what abilities I'm giving. Like, which don't seem broken, which seem fun. I think I need to decide, like, how many, like, rounds of play there are, and whether I go with, like, the act breakdown idea you were suggesting.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to playing this. It will be available soon at the £5 tier on our Patreon. Or at least an early access version.
Yes, actually, that was promised, via everything.
Link in the...
I don't know, do you think this sounds good? I just
play
need to knock
this.
something out.
It feels like a good, like, little roguelike, like, just game. It's good. I like roguelikes as tabletop games.
It does feel like the most sort of, like, I think it's like, a lot of my games I'd say are defined by doing a sort of, like, emotional mood or a certain kind of, like, experience. But then I think there is another side of me which is just really interested in card game mechanics. And sometimes those two sides meet, like with Ritual Magic or Transgender Deathmatch Legend. Here I feel this is all about the cards. I think it'll probably develop some heart as I write it. Like, I already think it is a bit about, like, leaving home or estrangement. And maybe that comes to the forefront. But maybe this just is, like, maybe this is just me going, like, no sadness, only vibes. It's alright, it's okay. Work all night, cry all day.
Thank you for listening
to Game Soup.